What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone had a good weekend, having a good morning. I want to talk about Path of Exile 2 real quick. So I know that there's a lot of people that have hopped in, checked out Path of Exile 2, and are not happy with the game due to loot drops or difficulty scaling. A lot of different reasons people are not finding the game enjoyable. And in some ways, I get that. These games are not going to be made for everyone. In other ways, people are asking for the game to be changed because they're getting stuck. They're hitting a wall. And the biggest thing I think people need to realize is the name of the company that made this game is literally Grinding Gears Games. Now, Grinding Gear Games, when you start it, it does have gears that are grinding, but this name is a double entendre. Grinding gears is not just the gears themselves that are physically grinding to make the mechanism work, but also the fact that in these games, you are going to be grinding and grinding and grinding for gear. Path of Exile is the type of game that heavily incentivizes you to grind constantly. You know, a lot of people they have this idea that they can compare themselves to other people that play the game. Should never compare yourselves to other people. That is the what's the phrasing? Comparison to others is the death of passion or something along those lines. When it comes to these games and you're playing and you're looking at how far other people are, you need to realize that you're not these other people. You're not as good as they are potentially. You're not as well understanding of the game as they are potentially. You're not as mechanically inclined as they are potentially. There's a whole bunch of different reasons as to why they could be progressing faster than you. They may have no life and be able to sit up and play for 40 hours straight after the game releases, and that's why they can push farther than you. It doesn't matter. Those type of things don't matter. What you need to do is you need to focus on your build, focus on your character. Don't worry about everyone else. It's early access. You know, I've been playing PoE 1 since closed beta. And I'm in Act 2. I wasn't able to complete Act 2 yesterday. I probably won't be able to today. I have at least another day or two of grinding to get my gear situated to figure out exactly what I need to do to kill the boss. The boss that I'm on right now completely melts me. And it's frustrating, sure, but it's frustrating because I know it's a skill issue. I know it's a character issue. It's not something that's impossible. It's something that I've got to figure out how to overcome. And I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of modern gamers aren't looking for, that a lot of ARPG players, not new age Diablo players, but true ARPG players, what we're looking for is a game that's going to challenge us. A game that, yeah, sometimes we want to shut our brains off and just grind, and that's what PoE 1's there for. You know, there's been a few times over the weekend where I'm getting to a point where I'm just getting frustrated and I know I need a break. So I hop over onto PoE 1, I grind out some maps, get some gear, have that nice chunky brain turned off, loot dropping, dopamine filled experience. And then I'll hop back over to PoE 2 and keep grinding. You know, there's a lot of different aspects to this game that are not yet understood. And one of the biggest things that I think people need to realize is that you've just got to keep grinding. If you get a wall or if you hit a wall, it's not because the game's broken. It could be because your build's not where it's supposed to be. Look over your build, figure out what's wrong with it. You know, I was able to take this build and scale the damage to incredible levels by popping in a couple passive that increase the damage that I deal after an enemy's been shocked, after an enemy's been ignited, after an enemy's been frozen. Now, I am a tri-elemental build currently, so with this, my damage is usually sitting at about 90% more of what it typically would be. 30 for each one. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't, math doesn't math the way that it should, but doesn't matter. Find out what's going wrong with your build. Find out what you're doing on the bosses. You know, this boss fight that we're going to watch right now while I'm talking is a great example of this. At first, this boss fight, I was like, okay, this is not too difficult. This isn't too challenging. But you're going to be fighting the bosses more than once because you've got to learn the mechanics. You know, I was telling people before the game came out, and this is without me playing any of the betas or watching too much of the gameplay, because I wanted to go in mostly blind. I checked out the passive so I could get an idea of what kind of build I wanted to go with. And then that was it. I wasn't really watching too much gameplay. I wanted to go in as a tabula rasa, as a blank slate. I wanted to go in with no idea what to expect or what to look for, just a new experience similar to Path of Exile given to us by Grinding Gear Games. And I'm happy with what we have. You know, I don't think that the gear drops are too light. I think that people are not getting that dopamine rush of the massive gear drops that we were getting in PoE 1. And to be honest, that's fine. This game is a lot more about the bare bones. It's the bare bones, you know. Compare World of Warcraft Classic with World of Warcraft now. You know, in World of Warcraft Classic, you're giddy. You're like on cloud 9 when you're level 17 and you pick up a belt that adds, 3 stats that are important for you. You know, everyone knows the meme: 4 strength, 4 stam leather belt. Ooh, like that was a real thing. Level 19, like that mattered a lot. And now level 19 belt in WoW is like 20 strength, 46 stamina, 13 to crit chance, and 47 to attack damage. Like the gearing is completely different. Now, when we're looking at PoE 1, we need to look at it as what it is. It's a completely different game. Or PoE 2 rather. So you're not going to be blasting through. You're not going to be going through and destroying everything like you did in PoE 1. It's simply not the same game. And if you're coming over from Diablo, you probably should have checked out Diablo 2 before this. Now, the difficulty between this and Diablo 2 are absolutely nowhere near. You know, this game is far more difficult than Diablo 2, but Diablo 2, the reason that game could feel so simple for me could be, well, I've played it for over 20 years. You know, these games, they are not for the faint of heart. They are not for the kind of people that are going to get frustrated and give up. I do not expect Grinding Gear Games to make this game more quote unquote easy or more simple. The game is very less complex with the understanding of it, but very much more punishing for not understanding it. And I think that's important. I think that's great. It forces you to slow down and understand the mechanics of the game. Understand that you may need to move your passive points around. You know, it's just, you've got to figure out what you're doing wrong. It's not that the game's broken. It's that you're doing something wrong. And people may not like to hear that, but, that's just what it is. There's a huge movement right now in the world, in society, where it's not your fault. It's the game's fault. And in a lot of cases, let's be honest, in a lot of cases, that is the truth. But in this game, I don't think it is. Now, would people be happier if the game was less difficult? Absolutely. But that's not what Grinding Gear Games was going for. Would the casual gamers and journalists have been happier if Elden Ring would have been easier? Absolutely. But that's not what they were going for. And that's what we need to look at Path of Exile 2 like. This is much more in line, and Jonathan Rogers said this in numerous interviews before the game came out. He was heavily influenced by Elden Ring when playing this game. And this is much more inclined to a Souls-like ARPG. I don't know how many people I talk to at work, because I'm a vendor. I do DSD delivery. So I go through a whole bunch of different retail stores for my job. And I'm talking to the employees that work there and asking them about the game, just casual gamers. A lot of them are just casual gamers, Diablo 4 enjoyers, Final Fantasy 14 enjoyers. People that they're gamers, but they're not gamers. Like there's a difference. There's people that work on their cars like I do, and then there's actual mechanics. Like people in my family look at me like I'm a mechanic, and I'm like, no, 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 no. I am a parts replacer. I may be able to figure out what's wrong with the car, but when it comes down to it, I am a parts replacer. I'm not a mechanic. Your alternator's messed up? Sure, I can take it out and put a new one in. Your power steering pump's messed up? Sure, I can take it out and put a new one in. You need your suspension fixed? Cool, I can do that. You need me to tear down your entire engine and replace your head gasket? Nah, you're gonna have to go to a real mechanic. Like, I can replace your parts, but I'm not a mechanic. And it's like that with casual games versus games like Path of Exile 2 versus games like Elden Ring or Dark Souls. It's accessible, you can do it, but it takes a lot of learning. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of trial and error. And that's what people need to be looking at Path of Exile 2 as. It is a completely different beast. When it comes to the gearing and the item drops that people are complaining about, not making enough of gold to respec, I've had zero issues respecing. Here's the thing. Stop trying to blast through the game. Slow down. Pick up everything. Blue items, yellow items. If you don't need them, if they're not going to be used on an alt, disenchant them. Disenchant the item to get the shards. If you're low on gold, just sell the blue, disenchant the yellow. Do not be scared to use your exalted orbs. You're not really going to get too many in Act 1 from what I've seen, but in Act 2, you'll start seeing them a lot. I've got a really, really nice juiced necklace that I made myself. I picked it up as a white item. I threw my orbs on it to get it to yellow. I threw a trans, an og, and a regal on it, and the stats were okay. I slammed it with a couple exalted orbs, and it's a good fucking necklace now. Is it top tier? No, not even close. Does it have all the right stats on it that I want? No, not even close. Half of the stats on there are absolutely impeccable stats. And I crafted it myself. That's what this game is. You're going to need to be picking up items, selling items, getting shards, crafting these, drinking coffee, hiccuping a lot, crafting these items, and you're going to be crafting them a lot. Know which stats to look for. Health. Health is always going to be one of the most important stats that you will ever get. Do not neglect your resistances. When you're fighting bosses, and one of the reasons that I went tri-element is, well, one, with the way that they work together, but also bosses have resistances to certain types of elemental damage, and they have weaknesses to others. This boss is resistant to elemental damage, or resistant to lightning damage, so my sparks are not doing even close to as much as they normally would. Okay, well, use something else then. Like, if you're not liking the way that your build's functioning, then, like, if you're stuck on a boss, so right now, I'll use this as a prime example of where I'm at and what I'm doing. So I am at one of the last bosses in Act 2, and I've hit a wall that I don't think is necessarily mechanic that's causing me to get messed up so much on this boss fight. I think it is my build and my gear. With my build and my gear, I don't output quite enough damage to kill the boss. So I'm going to be farming. I'm going to be farming the the area before the boss. And I'm going to be, I don't know, probably spending a couple hours out there fixing my gear, fixing my build, figuring out exactly what I need to do. Maybe I need to rotate into more cold damage for this fight. Maybe I need to rotate to more fire damage. You know, you can see with the boss fight that I have going on in the background, it took me a few different tries. But you go in there, you learn the mechanics, you figure it out, and you go. If you reach this part where you can't beat it, and you feel like you just can't, farm, grind the gear to beat the game. This game is not impossible. Stop comparing yourselves to others. Pick up everything, sell it, disenchant it, use it. Progress slowly. This game is a crawl, not a sprint. So get out there and crawl, Exiles. You got this.